joining for this session today. So what I'll do is I'll basically focus on the pre-configured solutions from Azure IoT. But before I start, this is the agenda. What I'll do is we released a device simulator recently, and it'll work for both IoT Hub, connecting to IoT Hub, and as well as the pre-configured solution. So I'll do a quick demo on it, and then jump into the concepts of remote monitoring version 2. We released, it's currently in public preview, and I'll talk about why we went from a version 1 to version 2, and then I'll do some demos around it. So first what I'll do is go into this device simulator. So the way you can configure a device simulator is go into Azure IoT Suite.com, and you can click on a new solution, and you will see a device simulator card here. So you can click select, and what it'll do for you is it'll help you create this simulator for you. So first of all, you'll have to give a solution name, so it can be DevSim2, and then you select a subscription on which you want to deploy this, and select a region. So what it'll do for you is it'll go and pre-configure a device simulator, and this is all you'll get. You'll pretty much get AD authentication, and a VM will be deployed along with Cosmos DB and storage, which is locally redundant blob storage. And there'll be a web app which will be stood up for you to basically work with the simulator. And one thing with the IoT Hub is if you have an existing one, you can use that, or you can create one. So if you have an existing one, uncheck that, and pretty much the rest of the solution will be deployed. So this will take some time to deploy. So what I have is I have a device simulator already deployed. So here it is. So I'll launch it. And what I did was I actually pre-created a simulator here. Normally you'll get an empty input box here. So what you do is you go and select your connection string for your IoT Hub, and then you can pretty much set up your simulator. So what we give you here is you can create a custom simulator, or you can select one of these pre-selected, which will give you pre-configured attributes which will be sent to your IoT Hub. So for now, I set up a custom. So what I'm doing here is I have a temperature with a random behavior. You can say you can select increment or decrement behavior, and then I give a minimum and max and a unit. For now, I'm giving a Fahrenheit here. Same with pressure. I selected a random behavior, and then what I'm doing is you can select up to 1,000 devices. So you're actually simulating a real-time scenario for your IoT solution. For now, I'm giving 5, and the data will be sent out every 10 seconds. And you can end it like after an hour, after 10 minutes, etc. For now, I'm asking it to run indefinitely, and I'll start the simulation. So what this will do is it will basically behind the scenes help you set up, connect to the IoT Hub, and start the simulation. So I move into my IoT Hub here on the portal, and what I should see is if you go to the IoT devices, you should see a bunch of these devices which are actually connecting to IoT Hub. So all the customs, the 5 of them, they're all enabled and they're sending data. And how do you find out what data is coming through, right? So what I've done is you can actually go to the overview on IoT Hub and see if the messages are flowing in. And I connected this to time series insights. So there's a route which is connecting from IoT Hub into time series insights, and the data is being pushed into time series insights. So once we get to the Explorer on TSI, what we'll see is basically all the data which is flowing from the simulated devices. One thing you can do is you can select like a temperature, and then you can split by device ID. So you'll see all these simulated devices actually sending data. So this is like an end-to-end, almost like a device. You're connecting to about 5 devices into IoT Hub, and TSI becomes a consumer, and it's pulling in all the data, and you can visualize, etc. So this simulator was released recently, so I think it'll be a great tool for you guys to actually create like an end-to-end solution working with customers, and also simulate like up to 1,000 devices, so you're really seeing like a real-time visualization, etc. So that's the device simulation part. So what I'll do is I might come back to this later to connect to the PCS. So first I'll go back to my deck, and I'll go over some of the concepts of a pre-configured solution, then dive into demos. So what we had till we went public preview with remote monitoring version 2 is we had 3 independent solutions, which were remote monitoring, connected factory, and predictive maintenance. What this for customers is basically if you have a use case like a remote monitoring and you want to put together an end-to-end solution, we gave you a pre-configured solution where you can just stand up the whole solution within minutes. And what you can do is we give you pretty much all the capabilities. They're all open sourced in GitHub. You can bring it down, and the devs can actually modify the code and deploy them. So we give you that extendability capability of a pre-configured solution. So as we went through this journey with the customers, the main goal was for minutes to wow as far as setting up a use case like that, and then easily build a POC with the pre-configured solution, and you should be able to customize, extend, and scale this solution into production. That was the main intent of this creating a pre-configured solution. So what we did was, as we went through the journey of with our customers, building from scratch, leveraging a springboard as far as how you deploy these solutions, it worked out very well as far as how fast you can create these, and also easily build a POC with it. It worked out pretty good in that aspect. But then as we went through the process of extending the solution, etc., this is where there were some challenges as far as building them. We got some feedback about the code base is too complex, it's too hard to extend, etc., etc. So we took that feedback and we built out a version 2 of it. So what we did was we updated the remote monitoring solution. So you'll go and if you go to the IoT suite, you'll see a version 2 along with the previous version. So some of the goals we started off with were how do we beautify and add functionality to the existing solution. So we basically changed the web UI, and it's built on React.js, and you can actually extend your UI through the GitHub solution, so it's all open source. And what React.js does for you is it helps you with different form factors. You can actually go and look at this UI on different monitors, on different devices like iPads, your iPhones, etc., etc. So that's one thing which we added. Also, what we did was we made our solutions Docker enabled. So basically, you can actually deploy your solutions, extend them, and also they're all microservices. So you basically build your solution for your needs and deploy those microservices. And what I'll do is I'll actually go over some of the capabilities of how we extend these microservices and how you deploy them. So I already talked about the new user interface. So what we did was, along with the new form factor capabilities, we also added personas. So you can actually log in as an operator and work with your devices and how they're reacting, and you can schedule actually do a scheduled maintenance on the device, etc. So we added those capabilities into this new UI. And if you go to the iotsuite.com now, you'll see in preview the version 2. So you can select that version 2 and deploy them. And some of the highlights are a redesigned UI. They're microservices-based architecture. And currently, from the surveys we took, the most used languages are .NET and Java, so we enable them, and they're available for you to be able to deploy microservices in .NET or Java. And also, if you click on the link of an interactive demo, you can actually go see how it is even before you deploy it. So once you click on the preview of R2, right, or a version 2, what you'll get is you'll get this screen where you can select a basic deployment versus a standard deployment. I'll go over that in the later slides of what the basic and standard give for you. Language, you have an option for .NET and Java. And one thing is, once you select standard, the portal capability is not available for standard right now. We actually give you a CLI capability for this. I'll run that over in this demo. And how do you deploy that? And once you use that CLI, you can actually create a standard deployment. And from one of the basic differences between basic and standard is, if you look at this, what's installed, you'll get an Active Directory application, one VM, an IoT hub, a Cosmos DB, and a blob storage with a web application. When you move into standard, you actually get 3 VMs. So what we do is we provide an orchestrator called Kubernetes, which will actually help you with the deployments and also to be able to scale your application into a production environment. So this is the architecture. If you look at it on the left-hand side, we have simulators already built into the solution. You can actually connect real devices to the solution, but basically the simulators are pre-configured and installed when you install this solution. And then they are actually connecting to the IoT hub and sending telemetry data. And from the IoT hub, the microservices consume that data, and then they send the data for storage into Cosmos DB, where JSON-like document data is stored in Cosmos DB. And the web app becomes a consumer of that data, where it's dipping into Cosmos DB and showing you real-time alerts, real-time telemetry, real-time KPIs. And the Active Directory helps you to bring in other users, and you can create personas as far as making them an operator, an admin, etc. And to the right-hand side, what you can do is you can actually deploy microservices where you're connecting to logic apps to send it to your backend systems like ERP systems or other systems which you already have in your organization. So this is the overall architecture of a basic deployment. If you jump into a standard deployment, then you'll pretty much get the orchestrator, the Kubernetes orchestrator, which will actually work with your 3 VMs. And when you're deploying your microservices, they're deployed across the VMs to make sure that if a VM goes down, your service is always available. And also you should be able to scale your solution. And also another thing with pre-configured solutions is all your the whole deployment is available for you when you log into the portal or through other mechanisms like PowerShell, CLI, etc. And you can actually go and extend, like, for example, in this solution, you don't see time series insights. You can actually stand up time series insights and connect to the IoT hub deployed during this pre-configured solution deployment. And you can start extending. You can stand up stream analytics and push data into Power BI or data lake, etc., etc. So it's very extendable architecture. So what I'll do is I'll jump into some demos now. So if you go here, right, when you click on a new solution, you should be able to see this remote monitoring preview tool. And you can select between basic and standard. So standard is coming soon, so you don't have it available to be able to deploy it from here. Whereas basic, you can just deploy it for you. So what you do is you can transition from like a POC into production by first trying it out with basic and then moving into a standard solution. So what I've done here is I had to restart my machine before the presentation. So I took a screenshot of the deployment. What you can do is the remote monitoring PCS CLI is available on GitHub. You can actually clone it, clone the master, and bring it down onto your machine and run this. So you can do PCS help and see all the commands. So what I'm telling it to do is create a remote monitoring solution and a standard. And it actually asks you to log in and select your, so that it knows who you are, right, with the Active Directory integration. And once the login happens, then you can actually, it'll ask you to provide a solution name and also select your subscription and the location where you want to deploy. And it asks you for a prefix for your website. And once this is done, and for a standard, another requirement is to provide an SSH. You need to provide like an RSA file, and it'll actually help you configure with Kubernetes, etc. And once this is done, it'll go and register your application and create a resource group and start deploying these services in your solution. So you'll see like Cosmos DB, IoT Hub, then map APIs, because the website uses maps, and pretty much all the other services are deployed. And once it is done, it took about 9 minutes for me, about 9.5 minutes. And then another thing, what happens is it actually downloads Kubernetes credential file for you, so that you can actually connect to Kubernetes from your machine. So a couple of things. So once this is deployed, right, what you will see is, let me go to the portal. So these are all the different services which are deployed. So you'll see Kubernetes agents, and then also the VMs. So you'll see the 3 VMs which are deployed along with Cosmos DB and IoT Hub. So once this is done, right, then what you do is you can actually go to your web app. Then you can copy this URL. And you pretty much get a web UI stood up, which is actually has a lot of the pre-configured capabilities. Some of the things you'll see is you'll see a dashboard here, and there's already data flowing in because of the simulators. We have about 10 connected simulators which are connected right now. So the dashboard actually gives you various things, like it has system alarms. I'll go over how you can set those. And also you have telemetry data flowing in along with system KPIs. So then you can actually go and look at the devices. Currently, these are the simulated devices which are built into the system. And you can do different things here. You can actually go select a couple of devices and say, hey, by the way, I want to schedule a maintenance on this, right? So you select that, and then you say, I want to do like a firmware update. And you can give a job name and give a URL. So what it does is it actually sends the data or sends the firmware binary onto the device and does a firmware update onto the devices. So you can actually do like select many devices and send the same firmware update if you think those devices are can take that firmware. So that's one thing you can do here. And also another thing is if you select on one device, you can actually see all the telemetry data here. And if you go down, there are messages. You can click on it and you can see the actual message flowing in, like the JSON message. So this is around devices. This next thing is the rules. See, some of the rules are already set up here. For example, pressure greater than 250. It's a critical. It's a severity level of critical is what is shown here. So these things you can set up. So if you go to a new rule, right, you can actually go and set up a rule name, and you can select a device group and provide like, hey, I want to actually say greater than 50 go alert, right? And you can select whether it's a critical warning info, etc. And once you enable and save it, it'll actually create that rule for you. Another thing what you can do is go into maintenance mode, and actually you can click on this, and you can see the history of all the alerts for that one device, and you can actually go look at it. You can acknowledge these if you go click, and you can see what's going on. Why is this critical message showing up? What's the actual rule, etc., etc. So those are some of the pre-configured rules you have. You can actually go and download this website and add your functions here. You can deploy new microservices and basically extend your functionality, etc., etc. One last thing I want to show you is if you jump into the like your PowerShell, etc., right, like one of your command line, you can actually go and run Kubernetes commands, because what it did was it actually brought down the credentials file for you through and stores it in a .kube directory, and you can actually see all the different pods deployed on the in Kubernetes, right? So basically, we can see the website, we can see the web UI, IoT manager, the device simulator, etc., deployed. Another thing, what you can do is you can actually go and proxy it, and it gives you a website for Kubernetes, and you can actually go look at your services deployed and do maintenance. So one thing you can do is, once you bring down your code and make updates, etc., you go through the same CI/CD process of how you deploy into any Kubernetes cluster. So I'm not going to go into too much details on this because of the we're running out of time. So what I'll do now is this pretty much gives you an overview of version 2 and the architecture and the deployment. So I'll take some questions. I think we have like 4 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Ranga. I think most of the questions were answered by Priya, but I think still there is one question. So, hey, Gafar, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hey, yeah, you can hear me. It's Fonzie, by the way. So I'll be interested to find out. So if you have an IoT device, you do have 10 to the minus 6 time lapse. In other words, the time elapsed after 10 to the minus 3 has no value from a perspective of analysis or analytics. How do you handle that? And Priya answered me in some way and fashion, but if you have an on-prem IoT and you're using Azure IoT Stack in Azure, the latency comes into play. I'm wondering if you can share that, how some of the big players like Johnson Controls and Schneider Electric did that. I know the case studies are there, but I'll be very interested to get a synopsis of that. I represent medical devices for a huge healthcare that we use. It's very important for us to have a handle on that. So for me, 10 to the minus 3 after 10 to the minus 6, let's just say a sensor that monitors our heartbeat is invalid. If I don't get that in that time, I'm literally very constrained about that. So we are going to be examining that, but I definitely need some support. If you'd like to send me an email, I can get in touch with you directly. I know Schneider Electric is a different use case, which is basically a switcher, a relay, which is different than switching circuits between 10 megawatts to 20 megawatts. I don't want to get into complexity. So that use case is a little different, right? 10 to the minus 3 for them doesn't matter. For me, which is medical sensitivity, it matters.
Yeah. Not knowing the details on the problem, the first thing which comes to mind is if you have constraints like that, most of the time we suggest Edge, IoT Edge.
Okay.
So just send me an email and we can probably work with you.
Excellent. Would you mind putting it in the chat window?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm really excited to see if this can be applied effectively. I already have quite a few folks who are interested in our enterprise. Thank you again.
Sure, definitely.
Hey, Ranga. It's Vincent here. Also, just on a comment on that last person that was speaking, I didn't catch the name. I'd also suggest maybe you just reach out to your local GBB TSP.
Yes, definitely.
And they can also help you out with that.
Yeah, I'll actually engage GBB most probably. So. Awesome. Any other questions, guys?
I don't see any other unanswered question in chat window, so I think we're good.
Yeah. What I would suggest is just stand up a pre-configured solution and just play with it. The only thing you should be aware is when you click that button, there'll be a bunch of services which will be deployed. So.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call, and we will post the recording in our channel line, channel, also videos and presentation both. So you all have a wonderful Friday.
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.